sudah tidak melakukan pencarian membakar lagi, bisa menanam padi dan menanam buah-buahan dan sayur-sayuran tidak membakar.
Setelah kita dari kepolisian menjelaskan sanksi yang dikenakan, masyarakat jadi takut berladang tapi nggak membakar.
Pemerintah mengadakan undang-undang untuk tidak boleh membakar itu nggak kayak dulu lagi bernapas susah. Dan sekarang ini selama ada penyuluhan juga dari MPA ini, sepertinya sudah nggak ada lagi orang membakar.
Setelah dibentuknya MPA, syukur alhamdulillah untuk penyakit ISPA sudah tidak ada lagi, kabut asap pun juga sudah tidak ada lagi.
Dengan adanya dibentuk MPA dan dilaksanakannya patroli terpadu, kebakaran lahan dan hutan boleh dikatakan di bawah 1% atau bahkan tahun 2017 boleh dikatakan minim sekali, artinya bahaya kebakaran lahan dan hutan. Dengan dukungan semua pihak, khususnya dari pemerintah, kami yakin desa kami akan maju.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning in Rome. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to everyone who attend this online webinar today. I hope everyone is safe and healthy, especially those who are fasting during this Ramadan. Welcome to the second webinar series on encouraging community participation in fire prevention. As we know, forest and land fires events occur almost every year in Indonesia. The last significant forest and land fires in Indonesia occurred in 2019, which reached about 1.6 million hectares, which 70% was occurred on mineral lands and 30% on peatlands. Those fires are predominantly triggered by anthropogenic activities. If uncontrolled, fires can cause negative impacts, and it can be more massive and severe when the fires hit peatlands. Land preparation with burning is one of the main causes of fires because it's easy, fast, and cheap method to do. Although in practice, burning activities could deliver massive and uncontrolled fire disasters. In today's webinar, we will discuss alternative methods of land preparation without fire that can be implemented by communities. And we also acknowledge that community involvement and its role in supporting fire prevention and suppression are very important. So considering those conditions, the second webinar series on forest and land fire management tries to raise this issue, specifically regarding community-based fire management and several initiatives to develop land preparation without burning practices for community to support fire prevention. Today, we are delightful to have experts on forest fires, namely Dr. Peter Moore from FAO, Dr. Saptadi Darmawan from National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN, Mr. Hilario Padilla, and Dr. Suyip from RACE to share their experience with us today. And I would like to inform you that this webinar will be conducted in English, and there will be a translation into Bahasa Indonesia if you click on the world icon at the bottom of the Zoom application. Questions can be raised through the link that will be shared in the Zoom, and there will be door prizes in the form of electronic money of 100,000 rupiah for 5 participants with the best questions raised during the webinar. And we will announce the winners at the end of this webinar. So before we start the session, we will take a group picture. So I encourage everyone to turn on your camera and give a big smile. And I would like to get some help from Mas Nur or Mbak Dian to inform us if you are starting with taking the picture and if you are finishing the picture, the taking of the pictures. Yeah, so everyone turn on your camera and give a big smile. Mas Nur and Mbak Dian, tolong kasih tahu ya kalau sudah. Panitia.
Oke. Satu, dua, tiga. Sudah, terima kasih.
Sudah? Okay. Terima kasih. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, I would like to start our webinar by inviting our first speaker, Dr. Peter Moore from FAO. But before that, I will read a short resume of Dr. Moore. So Dr. Peter Moore is a fire management specialist. He has over 30 years of operational management and policy experience in natural resources, with an emphasis in fire management, system development, policy information and implementation, national MRV systems, forest and land management. And currently, he is a forest officer of fire management for the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations. And today, Dr. Moore will share his presentation entitled Community-Based Forest Fire Management. Dr. Moore, you have 20 minutes, and I will give the floor to you. Please, Dr. Moore.
Thank you very much. Just let me share my screen. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today. Share that one. Whoops, we're at the back. There we go. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with you all. Some of you I've met before, and I bring you greetings from Sydney in Australia, where I'm now based. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk to you about this particular topic, about community-based fire management. Watching the videos that were being screened before we started was an excellent introduction to the sort of things that communities are capable of. So what I'm going to do today is give you some background on community-based fire management, where it came from and why it's really important, and then how it fits into integrated fire management. In Indonesia, you have many, many good examples of communities being active in fire management and being responsive to that. So, and I'm sure we will see some more good examples of that later on in this webinar. The term CBFIM, community-based fire management, was coined by a gentleman named Samir Karki. Samir works in FAO now, but at the time he was working with IUCN, the World Conservation Union, as a regional forest officer based in Bangkok. And so at the very first workshop on CBFIM, Samir, we were looking for a name, and Samir came up with that name. Since then, there have been many reports and analyses, there have been case studies, training efforts, and peer-reviewed papers. And of course, as we just saw before we started, there's been videos, examples, and interviews with local people. So CBFIM and its effectiveness as a fire management approach has been really strongly confirmed, in particular in Indonesia, of course, where there are many examples. And also globally. So here are just some examples of reviews or documents. There's guidelines and a manual for community-based fire management in Ghana that was prepared in 2011. A study on traditional use of field burning in Ireland, so in a developed country where they're looking at going back to having traditional uses. Guidelines for training in community-based fire management for Mongolia, a study on community-based fire management in Spain, another developed country, a review by FAO that was done in 2012, and then a summary here of traditional fire use globally, but particularly with a focus in Latin America and South America. And of course in Indonesia, through C4 and partners, an analysis of the public policy for strengthening and scaling up community-based fire management prevention initiatives. So it's an active area of work for all of us. So it's a very good topic for a webinar, and it's probably, as we'll see, one of the best approaches that we can take. What is it? Because of course, to each of us, as we get our exposure and we work with it, we have different views and different perspectives. So community-based fire management is a type of land and forest management in which a locally resident community, with or without the collaboration of other stakeholders. So in the videos we saw support from government agencies and others, has substantial involvement in deciding the objectives and practices involved in preventing, controlling or using fires. So involvement in the decisions is important for the community. It involves local scale fire management, and we saw examples of that in the video. It's fantastic that you had that running as we were joining the webinar. And so traditional or Indigenous knowledge plays a major role in undertaking fire management, which is planned and conducted and controlled by local people. So this emphasis on local people having a role, participating, is very important. And I'll get to one of the reasons, the key reason why that's the case in a few slides. Community involvement in fire management can also involve a range of local actors, including agencies and non-governmental organisations, NGOs, and they're quite active in Indonesia, for example, but less active in some other jurisdictions. Importantly, and I mentioned this earlier, communities are in decision-making roles for the application and control of fire. So the community has an ownership, it feels a sense of responsibility, and it implements that responsibility. And that means that they have sufficient tenure, formal or informal, to ensure that their rights are considered along with broader national, provincial or district production and environmental protection aims and objectives. Indonesia, like many countries, has signed a number of international treaties on biodiversity, on the Convention on Climate Change, and so on. And those things have to have an influence all the way down to the field. But the communities need to be involved in the implementation of those things. And that the communities consider that involvement in land and fire management decision-making and activities is something that if they adopt it and adapt to it, it'll help them with livelihood and health and security. And really importantly, and I was very happy to see there was mention in the video of health, because I think the impacts of health, on health of smoke, are very, very important, not just for Indonesia and for communities, but for the globe, for the planet. Community-based fire management is one description of fire management, but where does it fit? And integrated fire management, IFM, involves integrating all the activities of fire management in a coordinated way, integrating the use of fire as a land management tool and the management of devastating wildfires in an integrated way, integrating the actors and sectors, again, into the same way, and integrating all the actors involved in suppression according to their roles, responsibilities, and capacity. From time to time, a fire becomes beyond the capacity of local people to deal with, and other actors need to help. So whether that's the Ministry of Forestry and Environment, whether it's like the Manggala Agni or others, it's how they're brought into that process. And in many cases, community-based fire management includes one or more of those components. Integrating fire management activities, integrating land management and fire as a tool, integrating the sectors into a process, and so on. Why is community-based fire management a really good approach to take? Why is it so important? Why is it critical in what we do? The reason is that people cause the majority of fires globally, and this is overwhelmingly demonstrated. It's not on purpose. This isn't about arson or damage. It's from a combination of limited access to alternative approaches, access to machinery, access to different technologies. It's due to accidents, a weak understanding of fire risk, not sure when things are too dry or too hot or too windy, machinery failure, poor practice, negligence, and carelessness. So people are causing the fires, they're the source of the ignition, but they're not doing it, and it's deliberate, but it's not negative. In 2006, FAO conducted a global fire assessment, and we're due as an organisation to do another one in the next couple of years. But the proportion of human-caused fires in the Mediterranean region was 95%. In South Asia, so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, it was 90%. In South America, which is everything south of Mexico, it was 85%, and in Northeast Asia, it was 80%. So if you're interested in fires and you're interested in working with them to reduce the risk of them happening and causing damage and impacts to health, you need to be talking to people. Another critical factor the reason that why community-based fire management is critical is size distribution. 90% of fires are readily contained and burn 10% or less of the total area burnt. So what I mean is that 90% of the fires in a given country in a given year burn 10% of the area that's burnt in total. So most fires are very small. What that means is that the current planning and the management and the technologies are working reasonably well in restricting the number of fires that escape to less than 10%. So what we've been doing in the past, what communities have been doing in the past, and local resources, is working very effectively. The smaller fires are being taken care of by traditional local resources, by people and agencies, and equipment that is already available to those communities. Of course, if 90% of fires burn 10% of the area, then the other 90% of the area is burnt by the 5 to 10% of fires that become very large and damaging. Just as an example, this is a fire size distribution graph from Portugal. Portugal's obviously a developed country. They've developed a very innovative and very useful national strategy. But over those 20 years, 2001 to 2021, you can see that over half the fires are smaller than 0.05 of a hectare. Now, I'm not very good with hectares, so 0.05 of a hectare is a square 22 metres by 22 metres in size. So it's about 1/5 the size of a football field. So it's a very small area, and over half the fires in Portugal in that 20 years were less than that size. And they were less than that size because the existing processes and the communities and what was available to communities was really able to deal with most situations most of the time. So we need to strengthen and enable communities to keep doing what they're doing and then help them to continue to work effectively at reducing the risk beyond that. In 2020, only 2 years ago, the World Bank did a policy note. It was to try to look beyond the physical side of fires, beyond firefighting, beyond fire suppression, beyond equipment. And they had 5 recommendations, which was to refocus policies and incentives to promote fire-smart landscape approaches. In other words, communities. Invest in both fire prevention and suppression. Now, that's a general statement, but obviously communities could be very active in that and are. To implement existing fire management technologies at the landscape level. Now, the communities are at the landscape level, and they're already using those existing technologies, as I mentioned earlier, to keep fire sizes small and reduce the numbers of large fires. To improve wildfire data collection, analysis, and review. The more we know about how many fires we have, the more we know about why they started, how they started, when they started, the stronger our planning can become, and the more support that we can give communities in contributing to the solution. And the 5th was to strengthen stakeholder coordination and preparedness. And in that, they had a point, an explanation, and it was to recognise and use the knowledge, the leadership, and expertise of local citizens and community groups by involving community members at the local, subnational, national, regional, and international level to ensure that processes are open and accessible to people of different backgrounds and cultures, and especially Indigenous communities. And in that video, we saw knowledge and we saw leadership and we saw the expertise of local people and citizens, and also of some of the provincial agencies and staff. So for community-based fire management, it was, as a name, it's been with us since the year 2000. Of course, as a practice, it's been with us for tens of thousands of years. In my country, Australia, our Indigenous people have been burning and practicing burning in the landscape for 60,000 years or more, and there are many other countries that are similar. Because of the large numbers of fires that are managed well, we need to learn from Indigenous and traditional and local practice. And then we need to work with them for them, communities, to be able to contribute to integrated fire management through these sorts of recommendations. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really look forward to listening to the other presentations and hearing a bit more about what's been happening in Indonesia since I was there. Thank you very much, Ibu Bernie.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your interesting presentation. So the take-home message from your presentation is actually the importance of involving local or indigenous community in fire management, because those community, they can handle most of the small fires using technologies at the landscape level. So, and we need to learn from them about using their local technologies. So thank you so much, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, now I will invite the second speaker, Dr. Saptadi Darmawan. Dr. Saptadi is a researcher who works for the National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia, or it is called BRIN. And he has been engaged in several research and projects related to the implementation of integrated charcoal in the peatland cultivation system in Central Kalimantan, and then also in about application of integrated charcoal and bamboo technology to support smart tourism in the Lake Toba area, and manufacture and utilization of nanocarbon techniques to cope with pollution, radiation, and health. And today, Dr. Saptadi will be presenting about biomass utilization from land preparation using integrated charcoal technology. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Dr. Saptadi. Please, Dr. Saptadi, the floor is yours. Pak Saptadi, are you here? Pak Saptadi? Ya, silakan Pak, masih mute. You can turn on your audio.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Share screen. Okay, good afternoon. I would like thanks to moderator and committee who has given me the opportunity to deliver our topic, biomass utilization from land preparation using integrated charcoal technology. My name is Saptadi Darmawan. I'm supported by the team from research group of chemical processing, energy, and non-timber forest product. Okay, PLTB in Indonesia is in bahasa is penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar. Is development of practice land preparation without burning. The goal of this activity are to contribute the fire prevention program, provide an alternative solution for commodity against government regulation regarding the prohibition of land preparation by burning. The next, by implementation of integrated charcoal technology, utilization of biomass waste from land preparation to produce more useful or economical product, such as charcoal, compost, and liquid smoke. Those products are then reused back on agriculture to support the purification process. Okay, in the slide, what is the integrated charcoal technology, or ICT? ICT is an environmentally friendly applied technology because it utilizes with biomass and the process using simple or low technology with release low emission. This technology generated three products, more better if the products are used together. These are some products from ICT. The first is charcoal. Here are some properties of charcoal. Charcoal is alkaline or base, as nutrient store, can improve the soil structure, as a water store and a host for microorganisms. The second is compost plus charcoal provide micronutrients, and microorganisms. The last is liquid smoke or pyrolytic acid act as micronutrients, growth hormone, and pest control. Okay, in this slide, what is the charcoal of biochar? Biochar is the carbon-rich product from biomass obtained when biomass such as wood, reeds, or leaves is heated in a closed room or container with a little or no available air. And then for complementary and after synergetic objective may motivate biochar application for environmental arrangement. The first soil improvement with input biochar, we can increase the soil structure to the cultivation. The next waste management, we can use the waste from land clearing or preparation land for cultivation. The third for mitigation and climate change, and the last for energy production. The wood or other biomassa can we produce make char or make char. And next slide. The next product ICT is liquid smoke. Liquid smoke is a natural organic liquid from smoke condensation. Has color yellow to dark brown. Not good smell. Really, it's not good smell. Contain acid, phenols, alcohol, compound, and macronutrients. Biomass carbonization generally produce charcoal about 20 to 25%, and gases is about 75 to 80%. By condensing the smoke, it can reduce pollution up to 40%, becoming a liquid smoke product. This is the condenser for catch the smoke to make the liquid smoke. Okay, this is the last product of ICT, that is the compost plus charcoal. Charcoal is a raw material from biomass. The compost using the composter activator agent become a fertilizer. There are two techniques to make a compost charcoal. The first by mixing charcoal with a compost, and the second, the charcoal is mixed with biomass, then compost together to make the fertilizer. On the next slide, we saw the TLTB, the development of practice and preparation for learning activities. This is the activities and the scope in ITVO in this project. The activity is clear the land from plants like shrub, breeze, tree, leaves, and etc. Carried out manually or semi-mechanically. Collected or grouped biomass waste. Biomass is used as raw material for making charcoal, liquid smoke, and compost charcoal. The waste we don't burn often, but we burn with controlling. In this activation land preparation, we prepare land for cultivation, constructing land bed. That's here, installing mulch. This the planting activity, we planting the commodities. The kind of commodities plant are selected by the farmer. What we want to plant kind of the commodities. And the next, input compost charcoal. Input compost charcoal to the soil, to the land. In it more compost input on mangrove land to reduce the acidity and to improve soil quality, because charcoal is alkaline and the wetland usually acid. This activity carried out the cultivation include maintenance plants by watering, cleaning needs, controlling pests, spraying liquid smoke, and repeating. Ideally, the liquid smoke is applied once per week. The dose is about 1 to 5%. In the slide, the end of the rotation harvesting is harvesting. Cultivated these include corn, eggplant, long beans, cucumber, and onion. Okay. In the slide is our experience ICT application in several districts. Here, this the result of application ICT in demonstration plot in several districts in Indonesia. Compared to the control, this is the ICT. This is the control. Result is even better than cultivation in dry or mineral soil. Okay, this is the result of chemical compound analysis of the taro. If with application ICT can increase the flavor or aroma, then decrease the carbohydrate and fatty acid, so food is healthier. This is the application ICT on rice field. The use of ICT product is less than conventional method or with chemical for cultivation. Of course, this is a low cost production. However, the production application is ICT is higher. 3.89 ton per hectare compared to 2.84 ton per hectare. Okay, in this slide, rice chemical compound. Okay, this is the paddy cultivation that produce plants that are stronger against with hoppers, better rice quality, and higher rice production compared to conventional cultivation using chemical. This slide shows the application of ICT in essential oil plants. Active compound with ICT is higher than control. Of course, this will increase the selling price. For example, the petroleum oil control just 1.73. But if we use the ICT technology, the petroleum increase to 12.0. Okay, it is a visual of plants that use ICT and control. The growth of biomass, this is a kangkung, and the right is a corn. I think the growth of biomass with ICT technology more better than the control. This is the graph also show of height and diameter of Jolotung and Gelam plants is better than the control. This is the blue is the control, the orange with ICT. Jadi and dropan with ICT more height than control. Okay, this is the conclusion. The PLTB program, development of practice and preparation. We know burning. The last, the next. I'm sorry, the internet is not stable. Okay, the no change in practice of usual cultivation spring commodities, utilization of biomass waste from rain and preparation, environmentally friendly, increase the plant productivity, increase the chemical-based component active, improve the quality of the land, product commodity more health, and the product is organic product. For more success of the activity, mentoring during this program is very necessary. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pak Saptadi, for your interesting presentation. It's great to see that actually zero burning practice is doable, yeah, by implementing integrated charcoal technology. And as you said, the ICT can provide many functions such as climate change mitigation, waste management, soil improvement, and energy production. But the most important take-home message is that integrated charcoal technology is a low-cost and environmental-friendly technology that can be done by communities, and it can be used as an alternative of land preparation using no burning practices. Okay, great, ladies and gentlemen. So now we are going to our next speaker. That is Mr. Hilario Padilla from Brace. And Mr. Padilla is a world-leading regenerative agricultural expert. He is now the project manager and special regenerative agricultural advisor at Brace. Brace is a private foundation that supports actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Asia and beyond. And Mr. Padilla advises on which specific farming practices Brace projects promote and ensures that complex evidence and information on regenerative agricultural practices are presented in an understandable format, even for non-farming audience. And Mr. Padilla has 35 years of experience in advising and managing projects across Southeast Asia and China on different regenerative farming practices. So without further ado, I invite Mr. Hilario Padilla, and he will be talking about low-cost, easy, and yield-boosting clean air farming solutions. So, Mr. Padilla, you have 20 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Okay. We do appreciate being invited to this webinar because we do believe that to scale out projects like what we are doing, we need to collaborate with government agencies. So this afternoon, I will talk about low-cost, easy, yield-boosting, burn-free farming techniques, or we call it clean air farming solutions. And before I go into the details of my presentation, I want to acknowledge our local partner, Field Indonesia. Field Indonesia was founded by alumni of the Integrated Pest Management Program of FAO in Southeast Asia. And we are very lucky because they're very adept in farmers field school, and they have a network of farmers all over Indonesia. And our approach is to do side-by-side comparative trials by farmers themselves. So this experience of Field Indonesia is really very helpful. And they had been also collaborating with international organizations such as FAO, World Bank, USA, Unilever, and also with government agencies in Indonesia. So we are lucky to have them, farmers in Indonesia. Let's just sit for a while and then imagine what they are into by putting our feet into their shoes. And as an Indonesian farmer, you have to deal with the harsh tropical weather of Indonesia since it's near the equator. So you have too much rain and scorching sun during the dry season. So with this type of weather, the soil is always degrades very fast. And that's the reason why, those farmers practicing Sweden farming / unburn in Kalimantan, the Dayaks, they abandon their land after 2 to 3 years because they are no longer productive. And on top of that is the unpredictable weather of droughts and floods, especially in the tidal areas of Sumatra. So with degraded soil, they need more fertilizers, and yet they're getting lower yield through the years. And after harvest, they have to deal with the crop residue, and they have to do it quickly. And without those machineries, the only option left for them is to burn, to do it quickly, because that's the easiest way. That's the most economical way. So in this situation, what should they do? Is there an alternative farming system that they could employ? This is exactly the reason, that brought Legimine to our attention. Legimine was a rice farmer from Lao. In June 2019, he burned his rice straw and they asked him and his neighbors to put off the fire, then arrested him, detained him for a month, and the local people were shocked. Before coming to our training, he did not know how to clear his land without burning. He knew it was illegal, but then he doesn't know any alternative. So he came to our training in October 2021. And he said that he was glad to come to the training because now he knows what to do. Oh, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, so before we started the project, we conducted some behavioral science research and found out that 95% of farmers want burning to reduce. but simply they have no alternative. So what we offer them are three major techniques, which we call the mulch no-till, which you could see on the left, and then a kind of deep litter chicken, wherein the composting is done by the chickens. Because one of the reasons I'm an organic farmer, and one of the reasons, in my view, why composting did not scale out is that it's too laborious. Yeah. And the third technique is what we call Hugo Culture, which was originally derived by a farmer in Austria, Sepp Holzer. And you can see, like, you could line up the logs, cover it with soil and mulch, and then you plant your crop. And then this one soaks a lot of water and provides nutrients for a longer period. And the fourth one, the minor one that we are promoting, is that one reason why farmers burn is that they need the ash to ash the land, the acidic soil, especially on the peatlands. So an alternative method that we are doing is to extract the calcium from eggshell and calcium and magnesium from dolomite with the use of a weak acid in the form of vinegar, and then spray it. But now, in this webinar, I will only discuss the main technique, which is the mulch no-till. Okay, so we look at crop residue as a resource rather than a nuisance. As they say in permaculture or permanent agriculture, is the problem, then crop residue should be the solution. So we work under this kind of thinking. And now farmers could now realize, the farmers that we have worked with could now realize the importance of biomass, that lately in their recent crop of rice, when they have no more like rice straw because it was used in the crop after rice, then they use, they cut alang-alang weeds and use it as mulch for their rice. Yeah. And mulch no-till in raised beds. So the first thing you do is to make a permanent raised bed. You could till in the beginning or not at all. But mostly if it's too weedy, then you till first and then make the permanent bed. But after that, no need for tilling. And then after harvest, you put back the crop residue as mulch, return to the soil. And we always say that the soil should always be covered, like in nature. If you look at around, nature is always covering itself either with a live vegetation or leaf litter. So if you do the same for the soil, you will build soil fertility, and then you avoid erosion from too much rain and the baking of the soil from too much sun. And in this one other consequence is that you see we have 1.5 meters of bed and 20 cm deep and 20 cm wide of ditch. So it means that 88% of the land is above water. And when the land is not flooded, then you reduce methane emission tremendously. So this is a picture in the training center, I think it's in Padang, and you could see the one on the right side of the person standing is the mulch no-till, and the left side one is the conventional. This one is the mulch no-till. So the mulch no-till builds soil fertility because you keep on putting it back, and it's a low labor and easy to do because you avoid tillage, And you could do it even without machinery. And a crop after rice, then another crop after that, then you increase the income of the farmer. But there are some added benefits, like, again, this is the guy who was arrested, Lechimin. And when we asked him why he likes this method, is that his comment was more that the mulch no-till, he doesn't have to tread into the deep mud. And we don't see this as benefit, but later on we realized that farmers do really value it, especially he's from Riau, so you know how Riau is. And this is Ankus, the project manager of field, agriculture manager, who does farming himself, and he's also an organic farmer. He did mulch no-till, and doing it organically, he harvested 6.2 tons compared to Cardini, his neighbor, just beside, adjacent neighbor, 4.6 tons using, around 240 kilograms nitrogen per hectare. So, and when you see the field, you could see that this is the after rice. You could see that the temperature at the height of the dry season, the one with mulch and mung crop is 28 degrees, while the one on the other side is 38 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you could just imagine how much water is lost when temperatures like reach 60 degrees on the soil, or 45, then the evaporation becomes too much that nothing is left for your crop. And you could see this evidence. This is at the height of the dry season, wherein the neighbors already have cracked soil, and he's the only one who has crop in an area of like 50 to 60 hectares of rice land. And you could see that on the left, the mulch no-till has less weeds. The conventional has more weeds, and the crops, you could see the difference for yourself. And instead of, leaving the field fallow like all his neighbors, he could harvest some, mung bean. So you could see, and I'll just give you a summary on how we do it, some of the step-by-step guide, and some of the materials that we develop, is that you do the raised bed, and then you apply the mulch, better to produce it NC2, because if you get it from your neighbors, then you are also depriving them of the mulch. And then no need to till, just put on the planting hole. And what we are encouraging is never to have a fallow period, so that the soil is always covered by crop or by mulch. And through this one, I could show you some pictures on how exactly it's done on the field. So this is Ankus. So on the left, he did it in West Java. So he constructed the raised bed without doing tillage, and then he put the mulch, transplanted the seeds, and in early June you could see the crop, and late June you have this one. And 5 days before he harvested the rice, he sowed mung bean, no tillage, in standing crop of rice. Then after harvesting the rice, after 5 days, he put back the rice straw. And then after 2 weeks, you could see that the mung bean are really growing very well. You could also do it with, what do you call this one? Soya bean. As in Indonesia, you eat a lot of tempeh. And then in the middle, a month later, you could see that the mulch is still here. You could see in the foreground, and you could see a very, kind of luxurious growth for the mung bean. And then for 700 square meters, he was able to harvest 60 kilograms of mung bean. And this has been done in Riau, in West Java, Aceh, Ciamis, South Kalimantan, and Jambi. So we're working on the 8 provinces of 4 provinces in Sumatra, in Sumatra, and another 4 in West in Kalimantan. So, and doing this technique, oh, by the way, on the bottom left, this is from the training center in Jambi. So we cooperated with the Agriculture Training Institute there. We created the side-by-side comparison before we conduct the training, so that they could use it as a learning unit during the training. And one thing that we realized, which is very important, is really crop planning, because most of the time, now that they could see the value of mulch, they really lack mulch. So it's very important in applying this technique to have really a year-round cropping system planning, as I said, wherein you generate the mulch within your farm. But nonetheless, there are some farmers who have, you know, creative, and like this one on the left, farmer in I think Jambi or Riau, he used palm oil peduncle for his watermelon, and the watermelon are grown this way are more superior than conventional. And this one they use corn stalks, and then on the lower left we use log branches in Sweden farms, especially logs. You don't need to burn them. You could use it as mulch, coconut and palm oil fronds. And you could see when you practice this one, you could see that mulch no-till really would have higher moisture retention capacity and better soil aggregate. And we have devised several scientifically based, easy to do soil testing, wherein during trainings, the farmers could test themselves. Like on the left, they're testing effective rainfall by simulating the rain. So you could see the erosion, like on the left, which is covered with mulch, you could see that it's clear. But on the other one, like this one, you could see the soil. And then when you apply fertilizer, and we use this colored fertilizer so that the farmers could see, you could see that in the unmulched one, it's just carried away by the water. And we frame this one like according to like behavioral science in a loss frame, fertilizer loss test, so that, you know, farmers could realize that, you know, they don't want to lose something once you have it. So we frame it that way so that they don't want to lose it. And you could see how mulch could function to prevent this one. And in summary, you could see that when you use mulch no-till, all the soil properties will improve. The soil organic carbon pool will increase, and you will increase the microbial biomass, you increase the nutrient retention, you increase the available water capacity, you improve soil aggregation, the infiltration rate, it doesn't, you know, spread out, it just absorbs, sucked into the soil by the sponge-like, you know, soil, because a lot of pores, like what happens when you do a charcoal, and because of the aeration and porosity. So in summary, this one works. And so far in all our trials with farmers, unanimously, it's like kind of like bragging, but then we have found out that the mulch no-till is always superior than conventional method. And I hope that people would, you know, more farmers will adopt it. And the reason why it works in our assessment is that it tremendously reduces labor. It's easy. It could be done without machines, but maybe use of machines could better scale it out. It reduces costs because mulch improves soil fertility and fertilizer use efficiency, as you could already have seen in the fertilizer loss test. But at the same time, when you increase the soil organic carbon, you increase the efficiency of nitrogen's use, and then you increase your yield. And aside from that, when you have a good crop planning, then you have a very high potential to earn more income from secondary crops after rice with very minimal labor input. So if some people here or some farmers are interested, you could reach these two WhatsApp numbers in Kalimantan and Sumatra, and the staff of field will get back to you. And thank you again for inviting us to this webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla, for your great presentation. And it's very great to see that BRACE have been working in many places across Indonesia, right? And yeah, you have been mentioning about Pak Legimin and Pak Angkus, yeah. So it's nice that you have been working with communities, yeah, in the field across Indonesia. And also, the take-home message from your presentation is that how easy actually mulch no-till works, and that it can provide so many benefits, yeah, ecologically, but also economically to the community itself. So thank you again, Mr. Padilla. Yeah.
And from our approach, I think our director, Dr. Sweet, would give you a brief on how we do things based on behavioral science approaches. So
yes, okay, yes, we have next our last speaker that is going to be Dr. Suyip from BRACE. So Dr. Suyip is the executive director at BRACE. She holds a PhD in psychology, and she has been working in the non-profit climate and conservation space for about 20 years, and with a particular focus on mitigating climate impacts from agricultural practices and waste management. And she oversees the development of climate projects and facilitates the collaboration between BRACE's local partners and world-leading behavioral scientists to combine behavioral insights with the experience and expertise from local stakeholders. And today, Dr. Yip will give her presentation on the behavioral aspects of science-backed burn-free farming campaign. So without further ado, I give the floor over to Dr. Yip. Please, Dr. Suyip, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. It's our pleasure to be able to share with you what we do with our Clean Air Indonesia project. And now I'm going to share with you how we actually use behavioral science to promote the campaign and the work that Hugh has just shared with you. Our campaign is called Clean Air Indonesia. It is a collaboration between a team of behavioral scientists headed by Steve Martin from the UK and Indonesian NGO Field, as well as BRACE. Steve is a best-selling author and also faculty head of behavioral science at Columbia Graduate Business School in the US. As Hugh has explained, Field has done over 1 million farmer field schools across Indonesia. So we do have two very reliable partners working with us. Behavioral science is based on 60 years of research and has identified over 200 behavioral rules. These are general rules that the human brain uses for decision making. Behavioral science includes some Nobel Prize winning insights too. Two behavioral scientists have been awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002 and 2017 for the behavioral rules or insights that they have uncovered. And our Clean Air Farming campaign is using some of their work too. And behavioral science or behavioral insights are being used increasingly by corporations like Google, Coca-Cola, and governments like Australia, US, and UK, UN agencies, World Health Organizations, for example, and NGOs too. So what is a science-backed approach? How is it different from approaches adopted by most NGOs? I would say most NGOs use a commonsensical approach. They focus on awareness raising and providing information and incentives to get people to do the right thing. This approach assumes that people are logical, that once they have the information and incentives, they will act accordingly. But are human behaviors really that logical? A lot of research suggests otherwise. There's often a gap between awareness or incentives on the one hand and action on the other. People simply don't do what they know already is good for them or for society. Smoking is a good example. Most smokers are able to tell you the harm of smoking. Do they have an incentive to quit smoking too? Sure they do. It's their health after all. Yet there are millions of smokers, not just in Indonesia, but worldwide too. A lot of behaviors are like this, including getting people to stop burning their crop residue or land. But relying on information and incentives alone is like making a stool, but with 2 legs only. To make the stool steadier, you need a third leg, which is behavioral insights or a behavioral science approach. These insights are based on how the human brain actually works. After 60 years of research, we now know that the brain relies heavily on rules of thumb to make decisions. There are some 218 of these rules that have been identified that guide most of our behaviors. They are what makes humans psychological rather than logical. For example, we know that people tend to follow the crowd. We follow what people around us do or do what they approve of. So when people know that a lot of people around them are burning, they too will be more likely to burn. So in our Clean Air Indonesia campaign, we won't be telling people that many farmers are burning, because we know that from behavioral science that doing so will only encourage more burning. Instead, we tell people what we found from our research, that most people, 95% of them to be exact, want to see burning reduced. People care about what the majority of their community thinks. So we share this statistic so that people may want to reduce burning too. In this Clean Air Indonesia campaign, we base our approach on research and evidence. There are 3 types of research that we use. The first kind of research is the research into human behaviors. What makes people change their behavior, as shown by 60 years of research in behavioral science. We also researched into existing studies on why people burn in Indonesia or in other countries. We also did our own research. We surveyed 1,291 farmers in villages in Indonesia to look at the situations that they're in and the difficulties that they face. One of the things that we looked at in our survey was the factors which were important to farmers who burn. We found that when burners are considering what farming techniques to use, they place more importance on cost, labor requirements, ease, how easy it is to use the technique, and time required to use the technique. They put more emphasis on these factors than non-burners. And for all farmers, regardless of whether they burn the land or not, they care about crop quality. So we apply these findings to make sure that the techniques that we use are realistic. This means that they are not only easy, but they are also doable by the target farmers. So as you have seen, the methods can be easily done by anyone. For example, mulch no-till can be done in 4 simple steps. They're also low labor because farmers no longer have to till their land. In this campaign, we don't train farmers to compost their crop residue because although composting is good, it's a lot of back-breaking work for farmers too. So instead, we train farmers to use chickens as free labor to do the composting for them, so that farmers don't have to do the hard work themselves to make it easy for them to adopt it. These methods are also low cost and require no machines to do, because a lot of Indonesian farmers are burning precisely because they simply can't afford machines. So as you can see, our techniques tick all the boxes of what farmers care most about, namely cost, labor, ease, and time. We also make sure that we remind people how easy the techniques are in our training materials and how it lowers cost for farmers by avoiding wasting money on fertilizer use. We also use simple graphics and clear instructions so that the method looks and feels simple. So here we have a picture showing the 4 simple steps, because we know from behavioral science that having reminders and making the techniques look and feel simple can encourage their adoption. We are now publicizing the techniques. When we are publicizing the techniques, we try to connect to local farmers by using testimonials from peers, fellow farmers, to show how farmers using mulch no-till, for example, can increase their yield, in this example, to 6.2 tons or 35% more compared with conventional farmers. We also use past burners like this one, legumen. And past burners are farmers who used to burn, and legumen, in this example, he just doesn't tell people how bad burning is. Instead, he shares his story of how he got caught burning and how he can now stop burning by using mulch no-till technique and benefit from it. We also apply behavioral science in our engagement with farmers by using social networks, because we know we are more likely to copy the behavior of our peers. We do this by engaging farmer leaders as clean air cadres or champions at a community level to promote the techniques in their own communities, because our research shows that farmers in Indonesia listen to other farmers and farmer leaders too for what techniques they use for farming. In engaging farmers, we also try to be realistic by asking farmers to just run a small trial instead of trying out the technique throughout his land. This will reduce their risk perception. After all, it is less risky to try a new method in a small area. So people will be more willing to try. Once they see the results, they will continue. A small trial is also more manageable and increases the farmer's chances of success. Because this is a new technique to farmers and things may go wrong, so the smaller the trial, the less likely things will go wrong. We also encourage them to set up a side-by-side comparison by having the new trials right next to the existing trials, like the existing method. This provides a great contrast to highlight the benefits, making the differences easier to see. As you can see in this picture, the mulch no-till here, it is much better than the conventional rice. The corn here, it's also this is the corn grown using Hugo Culture, which means raised beds using logs to build the beds. This technique that we are promoting has the corn growing much taller and better than the conventional right next to it. We know from behavioral science that this is by having a side-by-side comparison is more effective in persuading people to make a change than just a standard demonstration plot. A side-by-side comparison also provides a constant reminder of the benefits of the new techniques too, as farmers would be able to see the differences every day. This is another behavioral science approach that we use. I won't have time to go through how we use behavioral science in great detail, but I hope you get the idea. Overall, we apply behavioral science to work on two areas. One is to stop the burning, and secondly, to promote the clean air farming method. To stop the burning, we figured from our survey that we can either use a social disapproval campaign or a health-focused campaign, and we are actually running a test to see which one is more effective before we roll out the campaign at scale. To promote the clean air farming techniques, we are applying behavioral insights to three areas: to our farmer training, to our farmer engagement, and to our publicity campaign to promote the techniques. If you're interested, as Hugo said, you can, if you're a member of the Mangala Agni and you're interested in learning about these techniques, then please call our local team. And if you're interested in knowing more about behavioral science, you can email me at this email address. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Yip, for your interesting presentation. So it's great to see that we can combine psychological science with biophysical science. So here we can also see that understanding the behavior of farmers are important to come up with a realistic and doable no-burn technique such as mulch no-till. And then one more a take-home message that I got from your presentation is also that behavioral engagement with the community is essential to promote this, to stop burning practices and also clean air farming. Most importantly, consideration that we need to take into account from the community is that the technologies should be cost effective, labor, not too much labor, and then easy, and with the short time we can acquire a high yield and high yield for the community itself. So thank you very much, Dr. Yip, for your great talk. And then, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to the discussion session, we will watch a video on land preparation without burning or zero burning practice from Ministry of Environment and Forestry and ITTO.
Penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar, PLTB, merupakan solusi inovatif untuk pencegahan kebakaran hutan dan lahan. Dalam upaya mendukung pelaksanaan pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan di Indonesia, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan bekerja sama dengan the International Tropical Timber Organization, ITTO, menyelenggarakan pengembangan praktik penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar bagi masyarakat melalui pelatihan dan pembangunan demplot. Pengembangan praktik PLTB dilakukan di 8 lokasi rawan kebakaran hutan dan lahan yang tersebar di wilayah Sumatera Selatan, Kalimantan Tengah, dan Kalimantan Selatan. Pembangunan demplot PLTB dilakukan oleh anggota masyarakat peduli api dengan pendampingan dari anggota Manggala Agni, perangkat desa atau kecamatan, Babinsa, dan Babin Kamtibmas. Selama pelatihan, peserta memperoleh edukasi tentang pentingnya mencegah kebakaran hutan dan lahan, sekaligus mendapatkan alternatif metode penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar yang ramah lingkungan bagi masyarakat lokal.
Untuk PLTB yang kita terapkan di sini kan sebenarnya teknologi arang terpadu. Ada 3 produk, yaitu arang kompos, dan asap cair. Yang semua bahannya berasal dari lahan yang kita buka. Dari produk itu kita kembalikan lagi ke lahan, itu adalah semua produk-produk organik.
Di area demplot, peserta melakukan praktik membuat arang, kompos, dan asap cair. Peserta juga diajari bagaimana melakukan pengolahan lahan, penanaman, pemeliharaan, dan evaluasi hasil demplot.
Dengan adanya program PLTB ini, kami sangat terbantu, lebih tahu teknis dan cara kerjanya di lapangan gitu.
Dengan antusias, peserta pelatihan di berbagai wilayah rawan karhutla mengikuti proses penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar. Di daerah Musi Banyu Asin, Sumatera Selatan misalnya, anggota masyarakat peduli api, MPA, dan Manggala Agni bekerja sama memanfaatkan lahan yang ada untuk bertanam.
Setelah kita kembangkan, ilmu dan praktek yang kita lakukan itu harus kita siapkan dan kita terapkan ke desa kita dan desa tetangga juga.
Proses praktik penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar diawali dengan pembukaan lahan tanpa membakar. Salah satunya dilakukan menggunakan parang atau mesin gergaji. Limbah yang berupa semak belukar, alang-alang, ranting, dan potongan kayu kemudian dikumpulkan. Dengan teknologi arang terpadu, limbah dari pembersihan lahan tersebut dapat diubah menjadi arang, kompos, dan asap cair yang dapat digunakan untuk media tanam, pemupukan, dan pengusir hama. Selanjutnya, lahan yang sudah disiapkan dibersihkan dari semak belukar. Salah satunya dengan cara manual menggunakan cangkul, parang, dan sebagainya. Setelah bersih, tanah diolah dengan membuat bedengan yang lebar dan panjang menyesuaikan kebutuhan tanaman dan kondisi lingkungan sekitar. Taburkan arang yang dicampur dengan pupuk kompos untuk memperbaiki struktur tanah, meningkatkan kesuburan tanah, serta menurunkan tingkat keasaman tanah pada lahan gambut. Dan kemudian lakukan pemasangan mulsa untuk mencegah tumbuhnya gulma. Setelah mulsa terpasang rapi, lakukan pengukuran jarak tanam dan pembuatan lubang tanam. Siapkan benih tanaman, kemudian lakukan penanaman benih dengan kedalaman secukupnya. Selanjutnya, lakukan penyiraman untuk menjaga kelembaban tanah. Untuk tujuan pemupukan dan menjaga serangan hama, lakukan pemeliharaan tanaman dengan cara penyemprotan asap cair yang ramah lingkungan secara berkala, minimal seminggu sekali. Setelah tanaman cukup umur, pemanenan pun bisa dilakukan.
Perlu proses juga, Boy. Misalnya keulitan kita mengolah tanahnya, mencampur pupuknya, untuk perawatan memang harus telaten, harus ekstra. Karena kita kan nggak memakai kimia.
Di sini kita bermacam tanaman yang kita tanam supaya teman-teman yang ada atau masyarakat yang di Desa Pilang dia akan tahu di mana kendala dan dampaknya pada saat kita pengolahan lahan karena masing-masing tanaman tersebut akan mempunyai hama yang berbeda.
Di daerah Kalimantan Tengah, MPA menjalankan praktik PLTB dengan penuh semangat karena merasakan langsung manfaatnya. Lahan yang semula tidak produktif dapat dibudidayakan secara ekonomi, sekaligus membuktikan bahwa praktik penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar dapat diimplementasikan dengan baik. Di daerah Banjarbaru, Kalimantan Selatan, praktik PLTB juga dikerjakan dengan kesungguhan. Dan setelah 6 kali pemanenan, hasilnya pun terbukti bisa meningkatkan penghasilan mereka.
Kita dulu itu pernah mengalami lahan namanya terbakar. Sekarang dengan masuknya keadaan PLTB, kita mulai bekerja lagi.
Dukungan pemerintah kecamatan dan desa juga sangat penting. Salah satunya di Kabupaten Tapin, Kecamatan Candilaras Selatan, membantu pembangunan akses jalan dan pondok di lokasi demplot PLTB. Meski demplot mereka terkena banjir, mereka tidak lantas patah semangat.
Untuk saat pembukaan, kesulitannya apabila musim hujan. Tapi alhamdulillah kawan-kawan bisa bekerja sama untuk membuka lahan tersebut.
Secara umum saya sangat mengapresiasi dengan adanya program ini, pembukaan lahan tanpa bakar sangat mendukung pencegahan karhutla di wilayah kami.
Partisipasi dan dukungan banyak pihak menjadi kunci keberhasilan program tersebut. Pengembangan praktik penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar ini diharapkan akan terus mendorong peran masyarakat dalam pencegahan kebakaran hutan dan lahan.
Okay, thank you for the great video. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. So ladies and gentlemen, we will come now to the discussion session. All participants can type your questions on the link that is provided in the Zoom, in the chat box. And now I will invite Mr. Zainuddin from Masyarakat Peduli Api or Fire Care Community Wonorejo from South Sumatra. So Pak Zainuddin will ask several questions related to the topic we are discussing today. Pak Zainuddin, are you here with us? Ada di sini Bapak? Silahkan untuk menyalakan video dan audionya Pak, dan silahkan menyampaikan pertanyaannya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, nama saya M. Zainuddin, asal dari MPA Desa Wonorejo, Daobubah. Terima kasih kepada moderator yang telah memberikan waktunya. Langsung saja untuk mempersingkat waktu, izinkan saya bertanya. Saya dan teman-teman anggota MPA Desa sudah beberapa kali mendengar program penyiapan lahan tanpa bakar atau PLTB. dan kami pun termasuk yang berkesempatan diberikan pelatihan dan pengembangan PLTB. Langsung saja, salah satu kendala masyarakat keterlibatan dalam program PLTB adalah mereka harus meninggalkan pekerjaan utama mereka sehingga tidak mendapatkan pendapatan dan penghasilan. Sementara hasil dari program PLTB belum bisa panen ataupun dijual. Apakah masyarakat bisa diberikan inisiatif insentif ketika mengikuti program PLTB? Dalam pengembangan PLTB ini, apakah diperbolehkan menggunakan bahan-bahan kimia, pupuk, pembasmi hama, dan sebagainya? Karena seringkali hasil panen tidak maksimal yang kita alami. Mungkin itu saja.
Baik, terima kasih banyak Pak Zainuddin. Thank you Pak Zainuddin. I will translate your questions for all speakers. So Pak Zainuddin said that he and his members have heard several times about the land preparation program without burning. And they are also among those who have the opportunity to be given training and develop the land preparation without burning. So the questions are, one of the obstacles, when the community are involved in the no burning program is that they have to leave their main job, so they do not get income. And while the results from the no burning program cannot be harvested or sold yet. So in this regard, can the community be given incentives when participating in the zero burning program? And the second question is it allowed to use chemicals such as fertilizers, pesticides, etc. In the zero burning program method? Because without using chemicals, the yield is often not optimal. Yeah, so that's the first question from Pak Zainuddin. And then the second question, I will give the chance to Pak Imade Gandhi. Pak Gandhi is a fire brigade from Kapuas, Central Kalimantan. Pak Gandhi, silahkan Pak dinyalakan audio dan videonya dan disampaikan pertanyaannya.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Om Swastiastu. Salam nama budaya. Nama saya Imade Gandhi. Kami adalah anggota Manggala Agni yang bertugas di tingkat tapak dan berhadapan langsung dengan masyarakat. Masyarakat pun seringkali menanyakan apakah ada solusi atau bantuan dari pemerintah di tengah kebijakan larangan membakar. Alternatif PLTB bisa menjadi salah satu solusi larangan membakar tersebut. Dan sebelumnya kami juga telah dilibatkan sebagai peserta sekaligus nantinya mendampingi masyarakat dalam pengembangan PLTB. Pertanyaan pertama, apakah dalam pengembangan PLTB ini boleh menggunakan bahan-bahan kimia seperti pupuk, pembasmi hama, dan sebagainya? Yang kedua, tidak semua anggota Manggala Agni memiliki pengetahuan dan keterampilan dalam teknik pertanian, baik pemasaran, produk, dan sebagainya. Apakah mungkin kami diberikan pelatihan terkait hal tersebut, atau ada solusi lain terkait hal tersebut? Terima kasih.
Baik, thank you Pak Gandhi for your great questions. I will translate Pak Gandhi's questions. So Pak Gandhi and his members work at the site level and they deal directly with the community, and people often ask whether there is a solution from the government in the midst of prohibition against burning. And alternatives of land preparation without burning can be a solution, but the questions are probably the same like the one from Pak Zainuddin. So is it permissible to use chemical substance such as fertilizer, pest controls, etc. In the development of this no burning land preparation? And the second question is that not all of the fire brigade members have knowledge and skills in agricultural engineering, product marketing, etc. And is it possible for them to be given training regarding this, or are there any solutions regarding this matter? So probably, yeah, from these two speakers, thank you very much, Pak Zainuddin and Pak Gandhi. We have like 4 major questions. The first one is about incentives, yeah, whether the community can be given incentive, yeah, for when they are participating in the zero burning program. And then the second is about the use of chemicals, yeah. And then the third one is about the training, yeah. So probably I will ask the first question to Dr. Peter Moore. Peter, can you answer the first question? Is about the incentives.
Incentives, yes.
Yeah, for the zero burning program. Please.
I thank you very much, Pa Zainuddin and Pa Gandhi, for the questions. They're very important questions, and I was very interested to see what Ibu Su was explaining to us about the use of science, and I think that's part of the answer. Incentives, obviously, the way people have been doing things provides an income and a livelihood. It provides a place of work. It provides support for their families, and so on. If you're transitioning from what you have been doing to a new way of doing things, then there may be extra costs. There may be at different times. It may take longer. There may be, say, 1 or 2 or 3 years of the transition before your income and your food supply is back up to where it was. So there's an obvious need for some sort of a bridge, some sort of a transition across. Now, I don't have any particular suggestions for incentives for these communities, but I mentioned in my presentation that community representation needed to be from the local level to the provincial level to the national level to the international level. And one of the reasons for that is that activities like those being undertaken by Pa Zainuddin and Pa Gandhi need to be recognised. You know, Indonesia has signed up to some international conventions. Australia has signed up to some international conventions. If communities are helping our countries to meet those conventions, then the benefits of that or the costs of doing that are a legitimate decision. There's something to be discussed with government, whether at the province and so on. And they may also be things to be discussed with the private sector, of course, because there may be benefits for the private sector, you know, in not burning. We saw in the videos, you know, that the lovely doctor working with patients in relation to health. So the reduction in health impacts, because Pa Zainuddin and Pa Gandhi are doing the work they're doing with their teams, means that the health sector is reducing its costs or improving its outcomes. So there's a benefit there that could be used as a way of generating some balance about incentives. So they would be some ideas. And I think more broadly around the world, we need to be looking at those same sort of external inputs, biodiversity, climate change, changes for climate change emissions, and human health. I think that'd be very strong positions and arguments for incentives. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your great answer. Yeah, so there is a room, yeah, for incentive, yeah, that we have to be creative and engage more closely, yeah, with private sectors or health industries and so etc. Whether so they can also help in giving incentives to the community itself. So yeah, there is still a room. So there is a chance, yeah, for Pa Zainuddin and Pa Gandhi. And then the second questions is about the use of chemicals, yeah, for the zero burning program. Probably this question can be answered by Pak Saptadi and Pak Hilario. First, Pak Saptadi.
Oke, thank you. Selamat bertemu lagi Pak Zainuddin. Selamat juga dengan Pak Gandhi. Okay, preferably the cultivation with integrated carbon technology application does not use chemical. Because based on some result of ICT application, the results are quite good without the use of chemical. However, it is absolutely necessary to avoid crop failure. The use of chemical cannot be avoided. Of course, it must be used wisely by using lower dose of chemical in combination with application of ICT. The problem in the field of very diverse adjustment need to be made. In the future, with experience gains, the farmer can certainly decide which one is better. Many things need to be considered. That need to be considered are environmental issue and organic product. Policy need to be given by providing incentive to those who cultivate organically and environmentally friendly. I think it's very important. I think we have the chemical is we can use, but with wisely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Saptadi. So Pak Saptadi said that, yeah, if it is really necessary to use chemicals, it is allowable, but wisely. Yeah, it should be wisely done. Okay, and then probably Hilario, Mr. Padilla, can you give your opinion on the use of chemical substance, please?
Yes. We do not promote organic. We just promote the return of the biomass. And I'm an organic farmer for more than 35 years, but we don't impose that kind of techniques because in organic farming, you really have to do a lot of effort. Like you need to put a lot of compost to really come up with a yield competitive to a chemical one. So we make sure that when you adopt our techniques, it doesn't result to yield penalty on the first year. Because if the farmer, experience yield penalty on the first year, it will be very hard to talk to him again in the future. And secondly, in terms of incentive, we want them, so all the techniques that we promote would result to a higher yield, and that's the incentive in itself. Of course, there are some people like they spend a lot of their time teaching others, and some of our cadres, I think field is also compensating them if they do like training to others and they use some time of their time and to give them a bit of allowance to do their work if it's needed. But then on a bigger scale, we are actually exploring ways wherein we will incorporate some carbon payments in the future, if that's really possible. And we are exploring, looking into avenues like that. And there are some exciting, researchers who have devised some modules to compute, the compensation. Because in ours, this is started as a climate solution project, but we don't frame it that way. We frame it in terms of the benefits like farmers could get, and because they are not interested in the climate anyway, they're interested in their income. So if there's a climate benefit, then that's a plus thing. Yeah. So hopefully in the future, if there's a carbon compensation, then it will be good. But I think to scale out really is that you have to be very selective in packaging your technology so that the technology pays for itself. And that would, make people adapt. And trying it out with farmers is the only way to test it. Yeah. And then, as I said, you should ensure there's no yield penalty. That is always superior. And we are happy because if you talk to the provincial facilitators of field, we just met last week, And all of those people who have conducted the side-by-side trials, all unanimously positive results. So very good news on that one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Hilario, for your answer. So yeah, carbon compensation is actually an interesting alternative, yeah, to be explored. And yeah, if non-zero burning practices can.
But right now, but right now the computation is only like $5 to a hectare. So I don't know if it's an incentive.
It's very low. Yeah, I know. So yeah, that's why it doesn't work up to now. Yeah, it's only just we still have to negotiate with the price and so etc. So, but I think we don't have to expect too much from this carbon compensation yet, but we can focus on the ecological benefit that we can get from using this non-burn land preparation techniques. So the last questions from Pak Zainuddin and Pak Gandhi is probably I will ask Dr. Su. So about the knowledge and skills, yeah, because most of the fire brigade members, they don't have knowledge and skills in agricultural engineering, in product marketing, etc. So how to increase their capacity for those fields, and are there training possible or any solutions to increase their capacity? Yeah, please, Dr. Su.
Yes. Well, if you don't have the skills or knowledge, then you can't really do any of the techniques, whether they are the techniques promoted by field or promoted by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So training in those techniques it's important, and those who learn the techniques do not have to be members of the Mangala Agni. They can be. We actually prefer to have farmer leaders, because I understand that in Indonesia you have farmer groups and you have different farmer groups within the one community. So it is actually much better to be training the farmer leaders than to train people who don't have knowledge in farming or who are not farmers themselves, because farmers tend to listen to people who are similar to them. Not just farmers, everybody is like this. So if we can get some farmers to share their knowledge, respected farmers, not just anyone, but somebody who's respected in the community, and who also has a track record of introducing new techniques which are effective to the community, they will be very effective messengers. And for example, we just gave an example of Lekemen, and he was one of the farmers that we trained, and he is now promoting the techniques in his community. And we do organize trainings for our communities. I just wanted to add a little bit about incentives, because in behavioral science, it is well known that if people have to pay an upfront cost, if they have to suffer an upfront loss, an immediate loss, it's very unlikely that they will adopt the new behavior. So that's why we don't promote organic farming, because organic farming incurs a loss in the first year. And also the techniques that we are promoting do not actually require more time on the part of the farmers. So they don't have to suffer a loss in income or a loss in a number of work days that they have. And if there is, for example, for other techniques, which are also worth promoting, if they do incur a cost, then there should be a mechanism for them to get compensated for it. So that at least in the initial 1 or 2 years before they can get the yield benefit, because the yield benefit is far into the future. Future gains are not as appealing as we might think. Immediate losses actually count, according to Dr. Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in economics. Losses count at least twice as important as gains. So we care more about the losses that we make, especially the immediate losses. So it is very important, if people are sacrificing their time and losing income, that they will get compensated. But then the thing is, if you keep compensating them, it's not a long-term solution either. So somehow the method has to deliver the benefits to the farmer economically. So in other words, you might give them an incentive at the beginning so that they will work hard, or they can spend time to practice the new technique, and then the new technique will have to bring the benefits in the future, so that after the harvest, they will have the money which will serve as the self-compensation for the farmers. So it is very important. I can't emphasize this more. If we really want to scale any technique at all, we cannot afford to have farmers suffering or making an upfront loss or cost.
Yes, I agree with you, Dr. Su. Thank you very much for your opinion. Yes, so we should compensate the first loss during the practice, and we hope that the government can think about this. So okay, thank you very much, Dr. Su. And then next we will look at the questions from all the audience. So can you share us the questions that are raised from the audience? Okay. Yeah, so the first question is from Ibu Lailan Syaufina from Faculty of Forestry and Environment, IPB, in IPB University. Her question is addressed to Dr. Peter Moore. The question is, thank you for the interesting presentation. Fire has been used as the cheapest and easiest tool in land preparation in Indonesia for ages. Do you think it can be diminished at all? Any lesson learned from CBFIM from other regions can be implemented in Indonesia? Yeah, Peter, please.
Thank you very much, Ibu Lalan, for the question, and my regards to IPB, which I've visited many times. It's a very nice place. There are examples of fire being diminished in agricultural use. Here in my own country, when I was a child, we used to burn wheat stubble, so cereal crop stubble, oats and wheat and so on. And in about 10 years, that completely stopped. And it completely stopped because the science began to be understood, the sort of science that Dr. Hilario was talking about, that you can have alternative methods, that you can put the biomass back into the soil, no-till cultivation and so on. And that created that change, along with a number of other factors at the same time. So some regulation from government, which was to do with air quality. So you couldn't burn because of air quality, and so therefore there was a restriction, but a combination of things. So there are examples of it. I think the best, the techniques and the tactics that we've seen demonstrated and described today are excellent. They're obviously used in Indonesia. They've been tested in Indonesia. They're continuing to be provided through extension services of field and others in Indonesia. I think the key thing that we need to look at is two things. One is, how do you make those things, stimulate those things to then be done at scale? Pak Gandhi and Pak Zainuddin and their teams are doing it, but I presume that's a community, maybe one or two communities. How do we make that happen for many, many, many communities? So that would be the first question, is how do we look at that? And I think the presentation and the discussion from Dr. Su is really important, because it's about the way people think and the way people behave and why they behave, and how perhaps to understand better in order to then help them to change behaviour if that's something that's useful, which in terms of fire use for agriculture it is. The second thing to be really careful of, which I think in Indonesia is not a consideration or a concern, but in some parts of the world it is, and that's where you stop using fire in the landscape, but fire has another purpose in the landscape. It might have an ecological purpose. It might have some other sort of value. And in places like Africa or parts of Southern Europe, it has this role ecologically. And so if you remove it completely, you end up with another type of problem, which is that the ecological role of fire is no longer happening. So I think for Indonesia, my impression would be, particularly for most of Indonesia, perhaps Eastern Indonesia might be a little bit different, Sulawesi and so on. But for the rest of Indonesia, the places we're looking at today, I think using those techniques would be fantastic. But the key thing is, how do we scale them up? And that's part of the incentive question as well. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Can I add into that?
Peter? Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah,
Please.
I think like for me, it could be done as long as people would realize the benefits of not burning and utilizing the biomass and look at the biomass as a resource. Now, if you use a mulch, especially in Indonesia, wherein you have the extreme rain and extreme drought, you could see that if you provide farmers with tools to assess, like what happens, when you put back the biomass, you retain more water and you could measure it. Then you have lower temperature that doesn't bake the soil and kill the soil microbes. And this one, they could measure it. And the farmers we are training, they could actually measure it. And they know that when you have water, which is the main limiting factor in production, then you reduce the risk of crop loss. And if you have compost from the chickens, and what we advise is not to, because as I said, I'm an organic farmer and I fed up like spreading all the compost on my garden plot. And after 3-5 months, because of the very fast soil mineralization and decomposition, my compost is all gone. So then I have to make another compost, which is very expensive. So what we do, we advise is that you make the planting hole, you concentrate your compost there, nutrients, so you give your crop a boost. So it's just very simple solutions. And then you protect your soil by putting a kind of cover on your mulch, which is the mulch. And you will be amazed how you could build the soil organic matter in practicing this way. When you dig, even how much compost you do, you deteriorate your organic carbon. And if you have a lower organic carbon in your soil compared to a natural vegetation, then you are not sustainable. But if you have a kind of like put back the crop biomass, and then you increase your soil organic matter that approximates natural vegetation, then for me, you are sustainable. So it's just a matter of thinking, and we could teach farmers how to do it. You just run the test when you practice mulch no-till, and then you pour it, and you could see how the water erodes. And I think it's doable because, like, although they use machines, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, 80% is under mulch no-till. United States and Canada, they are almost like 65%. Australia is picking up. Maybe Australia now is around 45-50% mulch no-till. But then we could not practice it in Southeast Asia because it's smaller scales and we don't have those machines that make it easy. That's why we came up with this type of like solutions of putting back. So it's and maybe some other people, farmers who will try it, will even improve, the technology further. So to us, if it's doable, I think it's doable. And based from our initial experience in Indonesia, we are quite, how do I say, optimistic, because for us, we think it's really promising so far. Yeah. And that's why we are very happy to share our results early on.
Yes, thank you very much, Hilario, for your opinion and your feedback. I think I do agree, with what you said, that yes, the mulch no-till method is indeed a very effective way, to do land preparation without burning. So let's go to the second question. can you please? Okay, the second question is from Aryo Anjar Nugroho. He is a fire brigade from Singkawang. Yeah. So his question is addressed to Dr. Su. How to remind friends who don't care about the environment? This is a very good question. Yeah, Dr. Su, please. Dr. Su, you are still mute. You're
Sorry,
still
You're
muted.
mute.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a very important question. A question that is often neglected by people by NGOs, because NGOs, why do they do this kind of project? Because they care about the environment. But farmers, actually, they care about their livelihoods. When you are a subsistence farmer, you don't even, you're struggling to make your ends meet. The environment is very far off. It's not something that is relatable to you. So in our communications with farmers, we actually don't talk about environmental protection or this or that. We just be very practical. Talk about what farmers care about. They care about cost, they care about ease, they care about labor. That's what they care about. They care about their yield, they care about their livelihoods. They also care about the health of the community. So we also talk about, the smoke affecting community health. Actually, they have expressed that they actually, their concern is not so much about their own personal health or the health of their family, but how the fires can affect other community members. Maybe they feel like, feel bad about themselves if other people are getting affected. So that's the psychology of people in general in the community. So as somebody who is promoting burn-free techniques, we don't talk about caring for the environment. Actually, we talk about what farmers care about.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Su. Yes, I do agree with you. So we just talk with practical things that can be understood easily by the farmers, yeah, and they can see the real results, yeah, from their neighbors or etc. Okay, thank you so much. And
if I may also add, people also care about what the community thinks about them.
That's right.
So that's why we also use social proof, like community approval or disapproval of certain practices. So these are what makes people change their behavior, not their care for the environment as such, at least not in this context.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Su. And now we come up with the last question from Bapak Aris to Dr. Saptadi, Pak Saptadi. So the questions are, yeah, okay, I will translate it into Indonesian. Okay, has the ICT program been implemented, yeah, in Cianjur? So besides in Cianjur, has the ICT program has it been implemented in other regions? And with the good result, yeah, from the rice field production, what is your advice and suggestion in the application of this new technology in other regions, and that can change the paradigm of this new community? And the second questions, in the burning of the charcoal, is it done using conventional method? Or if it is done conventionally, is there any measure to mitigate the air pollution? Yeah, so that's the two questions from Pak Aris. Silakan Pak Saptadi.
Okay, thank you, Pak Aris. The application of ICT has also been carried out in several districts in Indonesia, like Lubuk Linggau, South Sumatra, Serang district in Banten province, Bogor, Garut, West Java, Ketapang district West Kalimantan, North Sumatra, and others location. Changing the paradigm is not easy but it's not impossible either. Direct demonstration and proof is a powerful way to change paradigm to paradigm. The development of demonstration plots, is the one way to prove it. It's followed by training and etc. The second about the carbonization process will certainly produce smoke. The carbonization process is carried out in the following manner. Control is spread of fire to other place and reduce the amount of smoke. Another important is the production of charcoal and liquid smoke, where the product is returned to the land for the cultivation and environmental purpose. What needs to be taken into account in this biomass from land when clearing and preparation is not managed properly? It will become fuel and attract pests and disease. Decay will occur naturally, but it takes time. Basically, biomass can be turned into fertilizer naturally, but it takes a long time, and the quality of the fertilizer produced is not good as the fertilizer is made. Due to the long composition process, of course, it will invite various pests and diseases such as fungi, ants, unwanted microorganisms, or other animals, especially rats, snake, and others. If the dry season, maybe is the potential for fuel. Okay, this is my answer.
Okay.
Actually, we cannot make the zero smoke from the carbonization, but we try to decrease the smoke maximally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Saptadi. So so this technique tries to reduce as much as smoke as possible, but I hope that the smoke that can be that will be released is not it's not dangerous to the environment. I think this your team has been inventing these techniques as such, so you can control the smoke. Okay, and then the last questions is from Ibu Kushartati Budiningsih from National Research and Innovation Agency. Her question is addressed to Bapak Hilario. Are the problems related to farming faced by farmer in Indonesia the same as farmer in other countries, for example, in China, Africa, or others? What is the approach to dealing with these problems in those countries? Is it the same as in Indonesia? Hilario?
Yes, good question. Yes, almost the same. Degraded soil, increasing fertilizer application and fertilizer costs with lower yields. Almost, the same generally. And the reason is why there is degraded soil is that you don't return the crop biomass to the soil. And second, when you till the soil, you release the carbon into the atmosphere. So the thing is that how would you avoid tillage and then return the crop biomass? And when you do that, you regenerate the soil. But the thing is that in different countries, of course, there are particularities wherein, like in other countries, like, the one that I mentioned, mostly like Western countries, they have large farms. So they do it with machines. But for us, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, including China and Africa, we are dealing with resource poor farmers. But then there are some ways to do the same without those machines, that you could still manage it. So it's just a matter of like creativity. So if you don't have those tractors that smother your cover crop, but at the same time plant your seeds, then okay, you could plant your cover crops, you could plant your mung bean, come up with a kind of like maybe your grass cutter, and when you have the mulch, then you could dibble your seeds as you used to do. But the thing is that, but the most important thing in the no-burn farming technique that we are promoting is that the covered soil with mulch conserves the moisture, protects the soil from, you know, too much heat, but at the same time increase the organic matter, which will improve your fertilizer use efficiency. So with a higher soil organic matter, with lower fertilizer application, you even get a higher yield. And then we have proven that time and again. So in summary, almost the same problem, but there are some particular differences, but basically it's the same approach. And much more because Indonesia is a tropical country. And when you see, like, most of the nutrients, 85% of it is above ground, you know, on the trees, living tissues. When you cut it for Sweden farming, you burn it, and when the rain comes, it will wash away. And then when the sun comes, it will bake the soil. So you have to leave your farm after 2 to 3 years. And that's what happens to, you know, Sweden farming. But when you look up to the West, since they have temperate climate, the decomposition is very slow. That's why they accumulate lots of organic matter. So if you have gone to Europe, to the United States, you walk into the forest, you have a very saggy forest floor. So it means that tropical climate is much more fragile. So we need the same approach wherein you protect the soil with cover, either a cover crop or as a live vegetation or mulch or with trees. And if you look at it, we have so much, you know, the question is that why is it that a tropical forest is like 10 times more in terms of biomass, you know, content than a temperate forest? So it means it's more productive. But when it comes to agriculture, it's the other way around. They are 10 times higher than us in the tropics. So what's wrong with our system of agriculture? And that's a very important question we have to ask ourselves and devise techniques that are appropriate to a tropical condition like Indonesia, which is near the equator. That's why I said the tropical condition is very important to understand, and you devise a kind of like farming system suited to such system. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Padilla, for your great answer. So yeah, we have to distinguish between whether it's a tropical region or a subtropical region, because they have their own characteristics that we need to take into account. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we end our webinar, I would like to give a concluding remarks of what we have achieved from today's discussion. So land preparation without burning is one of an alternative solution of zero burning policy that can be applied by the communities by taking into account the following principles. The first one is no burning principle. And then the second one, we have to take into account that it should be easy to do or practical to do. And then there is no change in practice of usual cultivation scheme or commodities. And we have to utilize the biomass wastes from land preparation. And the technique should be environmentally friendly and provide higher benefits to the community. And the technology should be scaled up. It can be scaled up, yeah, for wider regions or communities. So if all these principles could be acquired, no burning policy and fire prevention would be effective to be implemented in the field by ensuring the welfare of the local communities. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have finally reached the end of our webinar today. I hope this meeting will give us updates and better understanding about the need of community participation in fire prevention by using techniques of land preparation without burning. Before we close this webinar, there are 5 audience here who has won the door prize. Yeah, probably the panitia, you can share the names of the 5 participants who has the most interesting questions. Yeah, so congratulations to the 5 participants. And then lastly, on behalf of the committee, I would close this webinar, and I would like to thank all the presenters for your great talk and sharing your findings and knowledge. And I would also thank the audience for your active participation in this webinar. So see you in the next webinar that will be held on May 19th, 2022, with the topic Sharing Best Practices from Forest Fire Brigades in Asia. So with that, I will close this webinar. So stay safe and healthy. And for those who are performing fasting during this Ramadan, I wish you good health and Selamat Hari Raya Idul Fitri. Mohon maaf lahir batin. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you all. See you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Manggala Agni adalah sumber daya manusia yang sangat diandalkan dalam pencegahan, pemadaman, penanganan pasca kebakaran, dukungan evakuasi, dan penyelamatan dalam kebakaran hutan dan lahan. Sebagai garda depan pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan, anggota Manggala Agni dituntut punya keterampilan teknis dan jiwa korsa yang tinggi saat bertugas, kompak, tangguh, dan berani. Dalam upaya meningkatkan kapasitas anggota Manggala Agni, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan bekerja sama dengan the International Tropical Timber Organization atau ITTO menyelenggarakan kegiatan bimbingan teknis Manggala Agni sebanyak 11 kali di Daups Manggala Agni di Provinsi Kalimantan Tengah, Kalimantan Selatan, Sumatera Selatan selama masing-masing 3 hari dan diikuti lebih dari 400 peserta. Dalam pelatihan, peserta mendapatkan pengetahuan sekaligus keterampilan tentang keselamatan dan kesehatan kerja dalam pelaksanaan pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan. Pengetahuan ini sangat penting bagi Manggala Agni mengingat aktivitas pengendalian karhutla yang sangat berisiko tinggi. Dengan bimbingan instruktur, anggota Manggala Agni mempelajari teknik-teknik keselamatan kerja untuk meminimalisir potensi kecelakaan kerja saat bertugas.
Peserta itu harus dalam kondisi tenang apabila menemukan korban, dia tidak panik. Kemudian untuk peserta juga itu harus memahami kondisi di lapangan, tetap waspada.
Peserta juga mendapatkan pengetahuan dan keterampilan berkaitan dengan evakuasi satwa yang terdampak kebakaran hutan dan lahan. Anggota Manggala Agni dilatih teknik-teknik bagaimana melakukan evakuasi beragam satwa liar yang kerap dihadapi saat melakukan pemadaman.
Khusus untuk satwanya, teman-teman juga harus memperhatikan jenis satwanya apa-apa aja. Kendaraan, APD, alat pelindung diri itu nomor 1. Jadi jangan meremehkan, kita tidak tahu apa yang akan terjadi di lapangan.
Setelah mempelajari evakuasi satwa ini, kami lebih tahu dan bisa memahami cara mengevakuasi satwa tersebut. Terkait ketika kami pernah mengalami kecelakaan dan setelah mempelajari ini kami lebih tahu untuk mengatasi kecelakaan tersebut.
Materi praktik pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan diberikan agar anggota Manggala Agni selalu prima dalam bekerja. Siap bertugas setiap saat, kapanpun dan dimanapun, sesuai standar operasi di lapangan. Motivasi, solidaritas tim, dan produktivitas kerja terus dijaga dan dibangun dalam suasana kebersamaan. Dukungan sarana dan prasarana yang memadai akan semakin meningkatkan profesionalitas anggota Manggala Agni dalam bekerja. Pada proyek kerjasama Capacity Building on Forest and Land Fire Management in Indonesia, ITTO juga memberikan dukungan sarana dan prasarana, antara lain seragam kerja, peralatan pemadam kebakaran, GPS, dan kendaraan bermotor untuk mendukung anggota Manggala Agni dalam bertugas. Patroli Manggala Agni untuk pencegahan kebakaran hutan dan lahan dilakukan secara rutin dengan mengaplikasikan Smart Patrol berupa Sistem Informasi Patroli Pencegahan atau SIPP. anggota Manggala Agni dapat mengoptimalkan tugas-tugas di lapangan. Di antaranya, mereka melakukan identifikasi dan pendataan lokasi rawan karhutlah, mengecek tinggi muka air untuk memantau kelembapan lahan gambut, dan uji remas rasah atau identifikasi kerawanan karhutlah harian. Dalam upaya pencegahan karhutlah, anggota Manggala Agni melakukan sosialisasi dan anjang sana ke masyarakat agar tidak melakukan aktivitas yang bisa memicu kebakaran hutan dan lahan.
Sekarang kalau patroli menggunakan aplikasi Smart Patrol dan juga adanya bantuan kayak baju, kendaraan, sangat menunjanglah pekerjaan kita di lapangan. Dan tentunya lebih mudah karena kita bisa tidak banyak membawa peralatan seperti alat tulis karena sudah lengkap di aplikasi Smart Patrol itu.
Melalui patroli, monitoring kondisi hutan dan lahan secara menyeluruh di tingkat tapak dilakukan secara terus-menerus. Berbagai upaya untuk meningkatkan kapasitas SDM dan sarana prasarana atau Satpras Manggala Agni ini terus dilakukan untuk semakin meningkatkan profesionalitas Manggala Agni dalam melaksanakan tugas pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan. Dengan dukungan semua pihak, Manggala Agni selalu siap melaksanakan pengabdian dalam pengendalian kebakaran hutan dan lahan yang profesional dan handal.